Welcome to the Lemon Cult. My name is Jen. I like playing video games. Today we're going to talk about something that a lot of people have been talking about recently. There's something called the WoW Refugee Train. So basically it's a bunch of players who are going from WoW to Final Fantasy XIV. And I'm kind of one of those people now. Not entirely. We'll talk about that. You know, I played Final Fantasy about a month or two ago, and it was like a breath of fresh air, and I really enjoyed playing it. And it's been a while since I could really say that about WoW, which is very depressing. Anyway, I want to kind of talk about the things that are very appealing to me about Final Fantasy XIV, what's appealing to me about WoW. I also want to talk about, the bad things about WoW that have kind of made me make this shift a little bit. So I've been playing WoW since the summer of 2008, which was the end of Burning Crusade before Wrath of the Lich King came out in November of that same year. So I've been around for about 13 years. It's been a while. It's been a hot minute. And I've only played Final Fantasy XIV for like a month or two, so it hasn't been very long at all. But this is where we're at. My intention is not to stop playing WoW and only play Final Fantasy XIV. My intention right now is actually to play both. You might be thinking, oh, but Jen, then that means you've got to pay 2 subs. Yeah, I know. Trust me, I know. It's kind of interesting that WoW and Final Fantasy XIV both have a similar payment model. You pay for the base game and then you pay a monthly sub so that you can continue playing. So we're comparing current day WoW, current day retail WoW with the current Final Fantasy XIV one. We're not talking about old expansions or anything like that. It's all current stuff. So keep that in mind. So the first thing I want to talk about, and just kind of want to get out of the way, are the things about Final Fantasy XIV and WoW that I like. So I think both of these games do these things well. So one thing they do really well is the music. Now, Final Fantasy XIV and World of Warcraft are very different in terms of their music. I think World of Warcraft tends to be a little bit more atmospheric, kind of gets you into the mood of a certain zone. While Final Fantasy XIV's is kind of a little bit more dynamic, right? So if you're riding a chocobo, there's music for that. If you're fighting a certain boss battle, there's music for that. If you're in a dungeon, there's music. It's just a little different, but I think both of them have amazing soundtracks. And I quite literally have learned how to play some of the tavern music on the piano. That's how much I like the World of Warcraft music. Another thing I think they both do really well are their cinematics. Now, I think that the cinematics in-game for Final Fantasy are a lot better than WoW's in-game cinematics. Those are kind of weak. I think they could really step it up a notch. I know that WoW could do better. I mean, if you just look at their cinematics for the release trailer cinematics, they're amazing. They have the people to be able to do in-game cinematics that are much, much better than what they are. I don't expect trailer release cinematic quality, but definitely better than what there is, which is not good. The other thing is I really love the worlds, the map and stuff, right? Oh man, the environments are beautiful. The types of creatures you can kill and all those things are absolutely gorgeous. Just exploring is gorgeous. I do prefer WoW's more open type of world, meaning that, within Final Fantasy, there's a transition between each area. Whereas in WoW, it's completely seamless. You can go from one end of the map to the next and not have to do any loading screens or anything. I like that a lot more. But still, Final Fantasy's world is gorgeous. The last thing that they both do really well that I think is the transmog and glamour systems that they have, right? You can make your characters look however you want. I think WoW does this better than Final Fantasy in the fact that you don't have to keep the items if you don't want to be ordered to transmog them. Whereas in Final Fantasy, you have to keep those items and you have to keep them in a chest or whatever. I like, however, that Final Fantasy has dye, so you can dye your gear different colors, and that's really neat, and I wish WoW had that too. That'd be cool. That'd be really, really cool. At least for certain sets, maybe, So you have to understand that one major thing about WoW is it's all about the end game. People grind their characters just level mindlessly in order to get to end game, which is when most of the content is. And so that's very, very, very different than Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy is very much story driven. So it's much more about the journey than it is the end game. Now, the end game is good. That's not to say that's the case, but they are much more story driven. And I really like that. Speaking about the story, in World of Warcraft, it's insane. There's this enormous world And it's just, there's so much lore and so many things, so many great characters. You've got Illidan Stormrage, you've got Varian Wren, you've got Anduin Wren, you've got Jaina Proudmoore, you've got, you know, Thrall, you've got all these people, so many characters, and it's incredible. And you are but one tiny, tiny piece within those stories. Like, you're not in the books, right? You're not in the other lore stuff there is on Warcraft. You're just not. You don't really matter that much. I know that they kind of try to make it seem like you do by calling you like, oh, the Maw Walker and the champion and all those things, but it doesn't make me feel like I'm actually special, right? Now, if you talk about Final Fantasy XIV, you are the story. You just are. Like, that's the thing. You start off as like this adventurer that nobody knows and nobody really cares about, and you slowly work your way up and up and up until all of a sudden people are entrusting you with these huge monumentous tasks, and like, it's just incredible. You know, it's nice to see that transition from, you know, fledgling adventurer to this person who's very important, and to feel like you're truly a part of the story is incredible. And I really wish that there were some way that WoW could have done that, but it's just the nature of it. The fact that they have it based on their world of Warcraft, right? That whole lore of Warcraft and everything. Just the nature of that kind of doesn't leave a lot of room for a random player in an MMO. It just doesn't work that well. One of the things I don't think that WoW does very well, that Final Fantasy XIV does do well, is the crafting system. It's like, grab this material. Grab this material. Do you know how you get those materials? Oh, go to the auction house. Go mindlessly mine some gold ore. And then just, you know, put in the number 10 and press craft, and then you just wait as your character does this stupid thing, right? And then, like, you know, eventually then, oh, all of a sudden there you have 10 of whatever that item is. Like, what is that? That's like, no. It is so lacking, especially now that I know what Final Fantasy XIV has to offer, which is incredibly dynamic. Your professions, like, you know, what you do in Final Fantasy XIV, are treated in the similar fashion to your main jobs, right? Which is basically the same as classes. I could go from being a lancer to being like to being a miner or whatever it's called. Like, it's just like that. All you do is switch weapons, and then all of a sudden you're like doing this. And the crafting's amazing. Like, you have to really, really, really go out of your way to get the materials for this crafting stuff. So it really feels like you've actually accomplished something when you craft something in these professions. So I think that Final Fantasy has been really, really good in the way that they've approached this. Now, another thing that WoW does that I don't like is, as everybody knows, there's a lot of grinding. Now, the only type of grinding I do by choice is going, you know, to old raids and old dungeons and trying to get mounts, sometimes pets or things like that, vanity items, whatever. And also, like, you know, killing mobs until something drops eventually, right? But I don't want to have to grind just to be able to fly. I just don't. I don't want to have to grind to be able to get access to the main story. I don't want to have to get Stygia and Soul Ash and, you know, there's just so much. I don't want to grind. Grinding is so boring. It is so dumb. It is like just a way for the devs to get you to stay in the game and keep paying for it without actually giving you any content. And that absolutely sucks. So I'm tired of grinding, and I've been playing recently, and I was just like, I don't want to do this. And like, why would I make gaming a chore, right? I'm not going to play a game if I just feel like all I'm doing is chores. So that's frustrating, you know? And then there's like, you know, let's talk about Torghast, right? I think Torghast was initially this thing that everybody was kind of excited about. At least I was. I was like, oh, this is really cool. Like this roguelike thing where like, you know, the levels change and there's a challenge and blah, 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 whatever. It ended up being so mind-bogglingly boring that I'd rather eat my own finger than have to do like winding corridors or something. Like I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it at all. There's no reason for me to want to do that. So, you know, I have like guildmates ask me like, hey, you want to go red in Torghast? And I'm like, want is a very, very strong word. Do I need to? Perhaps. Do I want to? No, I don't. Not today, Satan. Not today. And let's talk about, let's talk about the dev team. Blizzard doesn't listen to their player base. Plain and simple. If there are things we want to see, the likelihood of them getting implemented is pretty small. If there are things we don't like, tough shit, you're gonna have to deal with it anyway. You're gonna have to do the grind and deal with those things anyway. Who cares? I just would like to contrast this with the dev team from Final Fantasy XIV. They listen to their players. Like, if there's something in game that people don't like, they get rid of it. Like, they listen to suggestions, they implement things that the player base wants, and that is incredible. And I don't get it. I don't get how WoW does not do the same thing. It's not like they don't have the people. It's not like they don't have the resources, because they absolutely do. There's no excuse in my mind for not listening to your player base. It is awful. Now, there are a lot of things that WoW does really well, and they're the reasons why I stay, right? So, first of all, it has very sentimental meaning to me. I've been playing it for 13 years, right? I don't know what else to say. I've had so many experiences and wonderful times on WoW. I've met people in real life after meeting them originally on WoW. Like, that's a whole nother story. But I've done that. Like, and there's this wonderful community that I have built within guilds, right? And speaking of which, I have a guild right now that I really, really love. And that's another reason why I'm gonna stay, is because I want to be able to play with those people, and I want to talk to them, and I want to, you know, spend time with them. And I think that as long as, if you can find a good guild in WoW, you're set. Like, you're good. You've got good people. But if you don't have a good guild in WoW, good luck. Good luck. Because the player base for WoW is toxic. People are just awful to each other. One thing that Final Fantasy does really well is that when you are new, when you have played less than 168 hours, you have this little like sprout next to your name and game above your head. That indicates to other players that you are new, that you have less than 168 hours under your belt, and you probably don't know what the heck you're doing. That's awesome. And that works so well with the Final Fantasy community. You know, people are actually really nice. They'll help you out. They'll give you advice. They'll give you some slack if you do something wrong. And I know for a fact that if they were to implement that same thing in WoW, that it would not go well because of the player base. It just wouldn't. It wouldn't go well. People wouldn't be invited to things just because they were new. They wouldn't get helped. They would be probably shat on. Like, it wouldn't be good. I know for almost a fact that would be the case. But Final Fantasy is just different. It's just different. One thing I also really want to talk about is the alt friendliness. Now, in World of Warcraft, you have to have a character for each class, right? If you want to play Hunter, you have to have a class. You have to have a character for that. If you want to play Warrior, you have to have a character for that. Priest, yeah. Rogue, yeah. Whatever it is, you need a specific character for that. However, in Final Fantasy XIV, all you need is one character. I'm not kidding. You need one character. Just one. And that character can play anything. They can play anything. They can play Lancer. They can play Gladiator. They can play Archer. They can do anything. So, like, when you get invested in a character, which inevitably happens, like I did, like, my character is awesome, and I love her, and I think she's great, and she's part of the story, which is part of the reason why I think I've got so attached to her. So I don't want to have to play other characters. I want to play just one character, the one that I care about, and I can. And I can do whatever I want on her, and it's amazing. And I think that it's such a cool design that they've implemented. I do think that it's kind of, again, like it's a breath of fresh air, and it's really nice to have that system in place. Graphic-wise, I like both of them. I think that Final Fantasy XIV has kind of more realistic / Japanese RPG vibes, right? Which I like. I think it looks great. And WoW is much more of a like timeless cartoony style, which I also like. So I don't really have a preference. I know some people really do, but for me, that's not like a factor. That is not something that factors in when, you know, I've decided to switch to Final Fantasy XIV mostly. Dungeons for both of them are pretty similar. I think, however, that Final Fantasy is a little bit more dynamic. And the first time I got into a dungeon with some people, I was like, oh, pretty colors. It just was really awesome to see all those pretty cool spell effects. WoW, that's not to say that WoW doesn't have cool spell effects. It does. But it's not the same. It's just a different style, and I do prefer the spell effect look in Final Fantasy over WoW's. Okay, this is post-recording, Jen. I have to say that I actually forgot to mention something pretty important. WoW has a free trial. You can level up to level 20, before you have to pay anything. And you can do that on however many classes you'd like. Final Fantasy XIV has this incredible trial. You can get up to, I think it's level 60. It's like almost 200 hours of gameplay or something like that, and it's completely free. You get all of that, hundreds of hours of playtime for free. So I think WoW could definitely up their game. So yeah, good on Final Fantasy. Good on them. WoW has add-ons. Final Fantasy does not. Let me tell you. Well, Final Fantasy's interface is nice. I do like it. And you can still do quite a lot. You can move things however you want. That's great. You can do a lot with it. That is not the same as having add-ons. Like, there are no, like, damage meters. There are no complete UI overhauls. There's no, like, just, you know, quality of life improvement add-on type things, you know? You just don't have those in the game. Now, there's not as much of a need for them as there is in WoW, but I would really like to have add-ons in Final Fantasy. When I know when I first started playing, I Googled, I was like, you know, are there add-ons for Final Fantasy? And it was like, no, there aren't. And I'm like, my mind was just blown. Like, I was like, what? There aren't add-ons? So that was kind of a little bit of a culture shock almost to not have add-ons, because I have a lot of them. We also can't just ignore the fact that Blizz has lost a lot of people over the years, a lot of like key players on their team, and that is really not, it just has been really bad for WoW. And now I feel like there are people who just don't know what the heck they're doing, who are keeping, you know, who are in charge of this game, and I think that's why it's going the way that it is, and I think that's why people are switching over to Final Fantasy XIV. In the, you know, the amount of people is just insane, and there's a reason why. By the way, I do really want to drive home the fact that I am still going to play WoW, and I still love WoW, and that will never be a problem. And just, I'd like to point your attention to Exhibit A, and then Exhibit B, and I've also got C and D. There's no denying that I love WoW. That, you know, so that's why I'm going to keep playing it. Also, you can tell which faction I'm on now. Yeah, for the Alliance. So basically it comes down to this. I really did feel a breath of fresh air when I went to Final Fantasy XIV. And quite frankly, I've been very, very bored and frustrated with WoW. Like, I was really excited for the new patch, and then I played it, and then I was like, yeah, log out, play Final Fantasy. So that's where we're at. But again, I will continue to play WoW. I will play Final Fantasy XIV. I'm not saying that every player needs to make a shift to Final Fantasy. Not by any stretch of the imagination, no. I'm not recommending anything. I think it's a totally personal choice, and it matters... it only matters what you think, right? If you love WoW and you like what you're doing, there's no reason for you to move over unless you want to play a second one, like me. But, you know, I think you do you, right? And so me doing me is playing both of them. Yeah, it does suck that there's a lot of things about WoW that disappoint me right now. And I'm kind of just hanging around. And if it gets worse, then it is possible that I fully jump on that refugee train and I completely abandon WoW. I don't know. I hope it won't get to that point. I think that's all I really have to say when it comes to this. Let me know what you think about current day retail WoW. Let me know what you think about Final Fantasy XIV. I'd like to get more input on that. Okay, I'll see you all next time. Bye. Alright, that's all for today, guys. Thanks so much for gaming with Lemon Cult. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to make sure that you get notified whenever I do post new videos. And to also become a Lemon Cultist, be sure to explore the other videos I have to offer on my channel. Remember, stay sour.